Hey folks, Randy Newberg here. How you doing? Hope you're doing well. Guess what time it is? It is application season. At our office, we have 3 seasons: application season, research season, and hunting season. And we spend a ton of time doing application ideas, tips, tactics, short videos to remind you of when the deadlines are, what might have changed. Because the very first step in all of this is getting a tag. And every year since I started doing multiple states back in 1995, so what's that? This will be my 28th or 29th year doing this. Every year, it seems like it gets a little harder and a little harder. We have more people applying and we have often fewer tags for non-residents. So, information is your friend. And that's why we do these videos. Now this video is going to be about some really big changes to be thinking about as a general plan. As you're coming up with your strategy, maybe you're in the midst of a strategy you've been working on for 8, 10, 12, 15 years. Well, that has to be adaptive and you need to be able to adjust that as things change. And there's 3 states that got some pretty big changes that either got enacted this year and will take effect in 2023, or could take effect in 2024, or they've been bouncing some of these ideas around, and history shows that when states start talking about certain things, within the next 3 to 4 years, you can just about bet that change is going to happen. So, anyhow, we're going to talk about 2023. Even though it's December of 2022. And as quick as we drop this video, then we're going to get into the Alaska video, because Alaska's deadline is December 15th. I think. I will point that out in the Alaska video. And those are for hunts next year already. I mean, it's like, wow, you got to start paying attention way in advance. And like all of our videos related to this stuff, these videos are brought to you by Go Hunt Insider. Now, I can talk about all the benefits of Go Hunt Insider. Just know that it's a great value. It's going to make you more efficient. It's going to save you a ton of time. And it's going to give you the best information at your fingertips. So go out there, use promo code RANDY when you sign up, and they're going to give you $50 of free mad money in their gear shop. So, I said some things have already changed for the 2023 application season. Wyoming. Wyoming had what's called the Wildlife Task Force that's been meeting for most of the last year. And they're coming up with all kinds of ideas, and if the task force approves something, then it goes to the legislature. So, one thing that did get approved and will be in force for the 2023 application season is that in the past, Wyoming gave 25% of the moose, goat, sheep, bison, not that they have grizzly bear, but grizzly bear gets included in that. They don't have any tags yet. But moose, goat, sheep, and bison, those 4 that are of note. Non-residents used to get 25% of those tags. Now it's going to be 10%. And I get it. I understand why Wyoming residents want that. I mean, my home state, we don't even guarantee 10%. Here in Montana, we say up to 10%. So, I'm not going to complain about Wyoming residents saying, hey, we want more of the pie. I get it. But if you've been in this Wyoming system, the sheep points and the moose points, there is no point system for bison or for mountain goat. But if you've been in there for moose and sheep, the game just got changed. And this is the lesson to be learned. If you take nothing away from this video, know that whatever you invested in when you started in a point system, that is not what you're buying 10, 12, 15, 20 years later. Because these systems change. There's not a state out there that hasn't changed their system in some way, shape, or form. Either tilting the table more in favor of certain groups or less in favor of certain groups. So if you're sitting on a lot of points in Wyoming for moose and for sheep, and you could have already drawn, you're probably pretty upset, because now when they go from 25% to 10%, the number of tags available for you at those high point levels just went down. And now you might have been saying, well, yeah, I could have drawn moose in this unit, but I wanted this unit. So you've been passing year after year, even though you could have burned your points and been out of that Wyoming system. Bummer. It is a reality that whatever the system starts out as, or whatever system you jump into, whether it's you're jumping in this year, or like me, you've been in it for almost 30 years, the system is going to change somewhere along the way. And you're going to hear at the end of this, my takeaway, that don't be a point collector. As quick as you have enough points, go and do it. Go hunt. Points are not to be collected. They're to be burned and used, and then used again as you build more. So that's the first thing that's actually going to take effect in 2023. So you're going to see a huge point creep for moose and for sheep in Wyoming in 2023. Just because now the pool of non-resident tags went from this wide to that wide. That's how it is. So Wyoming, with this task force, considered doing the same thing for deer, elk, and pronghorn, but that proposal got defeated. But just because it got defeated at the task force level doesn't mean some legislator can't pick it up and carry it in their legislative session this winter. So what's the moral of that story? If you're sitting on a pot full of points in Wyoming, think about what it would do to you if they changed the deer. I think in Wyoming we get 30 or 35% of deer and pronghorn point or tags. Think if they change that down to 10%. Think what that's going to do to point creep. Huge. So if you're sitting on points in Wyoming, burn them. Don't be a point collector. I mean, if you want to do that, you go ahead, but do so at your own risk. Now, one thing we do know in 2024, something that passed the task force and will go into effect in 2024, I think it's been passed, but if not, it's just a formality that the legislature has to approve it. That is a huge price increase in the special pool of applicants. So in non-residents, we have the regular pool, which is the lower price and gets 60% of the non-resident allocation. And then we have the special pool, which gets 40% of the non-resident tag allocation and has always been a much higher price. Well, in 2024, not in 2023, but in 2024, that special pool is going to have a huge increase in the price, where your non-resident elk tag is going to be just under $2,000 in the special pool. Your non-resident deer and pronghorn are going to be over $1,000. I think one will be $1,200 and one will be $1,300 if you won in that special pool. So you don't need to be Einstein to know what's going to happen because of that. Okay, we can see what's coming in the front windshield. Don't rely on what's in the rear view mirror when things are changing. Here's what's going to happen. In 2023, a bunch of those people who are sitting on a lot of points are going to look at that and say, you know what? I'm getting out. I am not paying $2,000 for an elk tag. So the amount of point creep we are going to see in 2023 as people try to burn their points and take advantage of these lower prices is going to be huge. And this is why I always say you have to look at the pool of people who are just buying points. Last year in Wyoming, only 20% of the total number of applicants in the elk draw actually applied for a tag. The other 80% are buying points. And how many of that 80% do you think are going to jump in and burn those points this year? before that big fee increase in 2024? A lot of them. Don't be a point buyer, or a point collector. Yeah, buy your points, use them, and as quick as you can, get out of there and start building again. Hunt as often as you can. Because here's what's going to happen. Those of you who have been point collectors, who have been building points, if you don't burn them in 2023, guess what? You're going to wake up in 2024 and say, what? It's going to cost that much money? I'm going to go over to the regular draw. I'm not going to pay $2,000. I'm going to go to the cheaper draw. Well, where the real point creep is going to happen in 2024 is in the regular draw. In 2023, you're going to see huge point creep in the special draw. And probably some in the regular draw. But in 2024, you're going to see so much point creep over there in that regular draw that it might, in some units and some hunts, it's going to add 4 to 8 points in the regular draw. So if you're sitting on points, I don't care if you apply in the regular or you apply in the special. In Wyoming in 2023, burn your points somewhere. I wish it was different. But if you want to be a point collector, just know you're going to do so at your own risk. And if you're wondering why in 2022, me, the crew, most of my family and friends, we burned a ton of points in Wyoming, is because we saw this coming. We were watching what the task force was doing. So this year, we burned some elk points in Wyoming. Matthew burned maximum deer points in Wyoming. He burned, I think, 13 pronghorn points in Wyoming. Our sweepstakes winner burned 12 points for elk in Wyoming. We could see what was coming. And now people who are late to getting that news or acting on that information are in a bit of a squeeze. I wish it was different. I wish the pie was bigger. But as Western states grow in population, Idaho, percentage-wise, has been the fastest growing state for many years. And how did they address that 3 years ago? They put non-residents on a capped region system for elk and deer, or unit for deer, I believe it is. Well, what happened? You used to be able to get an Idaho elk tag or Idaho deer tag long after when they opened up the sales on December 1st. You know, you could get them into June and July as a non-resident. Now, no. There's a waiting line. I think this year there were 40,000 non-residents in that waiting line just a week or so ago when Idaho did that. And they had to do it in response to huge increase in resident population. Montana is seeing the same thing. Wyoming, not as much. Colorado is seeing the same thing. Arizona, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico. All these Rocky Mountain states are seeing huge increases in resident population. And since our North American model is a state-based system, the first priority those trustees of that wildlife public trust have to be accountable to are the residents of that state. Any hunting I get to do in Wyoming, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico is strictly at the pleasure of what those states want to let me participate in as a non-resident. They have no accountability, no requirement to give me and all of us who are non-residents any hunting opportunity in those states. The reason I point this out is the Western legislatures will all be in session this winter. And you are going to see pressures applied to those legislatures to tilt the playing field more in favor of residents and less in favor of non-residents. Pay attention. These trends are way bigger trends than what we in the little hunting space can control. And they're trends that will continue and continue and continue as not just our state population grows, but as our country as a whole, right? We just keep adding millions of people every year, millions of people, millions of people. And it impacts how that resource gets allocated between residents and non-residents. So, and I know some of you are going to say, well, do a video that explains about why this is public land. I should get a portion of it. I've got that video out here a long time ago. We did it on our YouTube channel. I'm going to redo that video and make it a little more updated for today's world. But the point is, it's a state-based system. And the trustees are accountable to the citizens of that state, not the citizens of the United States. And those citizens of that state are given priority. So, now let's move to Colorado. Colorado put together a council. They did a bunch of, I'm trying to remember what you would call it, like sample tests or test groups about possibly changing their allocation of non-resident to resident tags, mostly for deer, elk, and pronghorn. None of it really passed, but they're responding to pressures that look at how generous Colorado is to non-residents. Colorado hosts more non-resident elk hunters than all the other western states combined. Now imagine if Colorado says, guess what? Our resident population has grown so much, we cannot be that generous to non-residents. That's really the crux of what has caused their agency to have to start looking at this. Well, Colorado's preference point system is the oldest point system in the West. It started in the late 80s. And it's known as the place where point creep, no one can ever catch up to point creep. So imagine if they said, we're not going to give away whatever percentage, I'm trying to remember again if it's 30 or 35% of our elk tags to non-residents, and we're going to drop that to 20 or to even 10%. What if they put a cap on over-the-counter elk tags in the archery season and the second and third rifle seasons? Think about what that would do to non-residents and what that would do to point creep. It would go through the roof. And some of you are saying, well, it can't get any worse. It can get a lot worse, because not even half of the people, not even half of the non-residents who apply for elk tags in Colorado even apply for a hunt code. They buy points. So the number of point buyers that we don't even see in the draw odds is huge. And the number of them that have gobs and gobs, double-digit points and above, is huge. Someday those people are going to say, oh boy, Colorado's changing things, I better jump in. Again, the point being, Colorado didn't pass any of those yet. But history tells us if they're talking about it, it's changing. It may not change this year or next year, but it's going to change. And if you want to talk about inflation, the inflation effect those changes have on your points, if you're a high point holder, is huge. Now the smart people are going to be like, yeah, I see that coming. I'm bailing. I'm burning my points. And when enough of those people start thinking that, and that's what all the talk is right now among a lot of these non-residents. You go out to the forums and the hunt, the chat boards. I have a big forum called hunttalk.com. A lot of discussion is going on out there about these changes. And you're going to see change in applicant behavior that goes, phew. So we've already had point creep every year since I've started this. When these states start talking about changes the way Wyoming and Colorado are talking, and I don't blame them. If I lived there, I'd be asking for the same thing. Just know your points today aren't going to get you nearly the hunt in 5 years as they could get you this year. So, now let's talk about Utah. Now, I've always said that Utah is one of those swing for the fences things. It's hard to justify the cost if your budget says, oh, I'm only doing 3 states. Well, Utah, it really is a hard place to draw. because of how long their system's been in place, how many non-residents have built points for elk. Well, they just passed a major overhaul of their deer and elk plans for 2023. And by that, it's mostly going to affect the season structures. And for elk specifically, that's what I'm going to focus on, because most of you watching, you've been building points for elk. It's going to say, all right, this portion of tags, they've always had a split of their limited entry elk, this amount, this percentage for archery, this percentage for muzzleloader, and this percentage for rifle. And the rifle percentage has always been 60%. Well, within that 60%, they've split early rifle, which you get to hunt with a rifle in the rut in September, some what they call mid-rifle, which is October, some mostly late rifle, and then a few what they call multi-season. In other words, you can hunt all three of the rifle seasons. Well, this 60% allocation is going to get shuffled, where more of the tags are going to go to the late season and the mid-season, and there's going to be fewer early season tags. So if you've been building a ton of points in Utah, waiting for that absolute glory tag, that one unit where I just got to hunt the San Juan, or I got to hunt, whatever unit it is, and you've passed up some other really good hunts on the Manti or the La Salle or, whatever it might be, you might be kicking yourself. Because with this change in Utah, it's going to shift where the point creep happens, and you might actually see some relief in point creep in the late season rifle hunts or the mid-season rifle hunts, because there's going to get to be more tags over there. And a lot of those tags are coming from the early rifle. So this could be your year to burn your Utah elk points, because here's what history shows us, is the first year when something changes, the smart people can extrapolate and project where that's going to go. And the other folks are like, well, I just have this company apply for me. I use this service or that service, which is fine. But they aren't necessarily paying attention and asking that application service to do this for them or do that for them. So 2023 might be that year where if you're in the middle of the point pack in Utah, the way this is getting changed, maybe this is your year to burn some points and luck out and grab a tag that otherwise you might not have got. Because here's what we do know, is once we have a year of activity to look at, and especially a second year of activity, now people really get dialed in and change that behavior. So your window to take advantage of this in Utah is in 2023. Because in another year or two, folks will be dialed in on it, and the likelihood, that window of opportunity is probably closed. So, anyhow, these are the three states that have the biggest changes this year, or at least the rumblings and the proposals that we're hearing about are going to come forth in the next few years, and that's going to create a lot of change. So, now I want to get into weather. This is something we really can't control, but we can adapt and adjust our applications based on that. And the two weather factors I'm talking about are moisture, which is either a drought, or really good moisture, which is a heavy monsoon, or winter. In the states where winter is a big concern are the mountain states of Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and sometimes Colorado. And where the drought is an issue, or moisture, lots of moisture could be a benefit, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, maybe Utah. So 2022, Arizona and New Mexico had their best monsoon periods in decades. So they came off 4 or 5 years of bad drought, with 2 of it, 20 and 21, being absolute extreme drought. And they had to shrink their tag numbers in all those Southwest states, specifically for deer and pronghorn. Now, if we could get 1 or 2 more years of really good moisture in those states, history, whenever that's happened, those states have ramped the tag numbers back up because their wildlife really recovers well when they get moisture. So I might be more inclined to sit on my points in Arizona or Nevada or Utah, hoping this moisture trend continues. And if it does, that's a period when I want to have a lot of points. Now, I'm going to get into the winter part of it, okay? How bad winters hammer things. And I'm going to focus mostly on Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. Right now, I'm recording this video. Today is December 6th. Right now, we've had more winter in Montana on December 6th than a lot of winters by March 1st. It is cold, it is blowing, and the snow is deep. Up high, the snow is super deep. We got a snow in early November. Actually, it was the first week of rifle season, so it was late October, and it was wet and it froze. And so those elk had to move down. And we hammered the bejeebers out of elk this year. So just our bull to cow ratios post-hunt are going to be lower because of how many elk got shot this year. Now for our deer and our pronghorn, which are way more susceptible to tough winters, they're in a bad way. I drove home the other day. There's 13 white-tailed deer standing in my neighbor's field at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, scratching through snow that's already up to their chest. I don't know how many of them are going to make it. So the same is happening in Idaho. My buddy Corey Jacobson, I talked to him a couple days ago. He's like, yeah, we're supposed to get 30 inches. I called him, did you get your 30 inches of snow? Yeah, in the mountains we did. We only got 20 down here at my house. Idaho's getting hammered by snow. Wyoming, you never know. Between snow, cold, and wind there, pronghorn are pretty fragile. If we have one benefit, it's that 2022 was a high moisture year, so our animals have went into the winter with great fat reserves. Hopefully that's enough to get them through. But it shows you the value of burning points. Okay, those people who burned their points in Montana and Wyoming in 2022 might turn out to look like really smart people if we have a brutal killer winter in the winter of 22-23, and come March, we're seeing carcasses in every snowbank. It emphasizes the point, don't just sit on your points for the heck of it, because next year may not be as good as this year. And when we have a huge winter kill like that, most states, at least Idaho and Wyoming, will lower tag numbers. Montana, we usually, we just say, people won't have as many to shoot. So anyhow, the takeaway from all this is go do your getting when the getting's good. Okay? These point systems, yeah, they have their pluses and their minuses. But whenever you have enough points to go, just go. Because we've got weather, we've got agencies that are changing the rules, and with legislatures being in session this winter, nothing is safe when the legislatures are in session. Burn your points. Being a point collector is a very high-risk proposition. So, the rest of this winter, we're going to continue with our normal string of videos and podcasts that explain the details and the deadlines of every Western state. And in a couple days, you're going to see the Alaska video. Because Alaska is the first one out of the gate. And then we got Wyoming elk. Then we got Arizona elk and pronghorn. And boom, 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 all the way down the line. And if you want to stay updated on this stuff, besides our videos, Go Hunt has what's called strategy articles. If you're an insider member, they spend hours, they spend days and days building out these strategy articles that Brady and Trail and Brandon and those folks put together there. They save you so much time and effort. First thing I do is I read those strategy articles multiple times. So in addition to those strategy articles, you got the best draw odds, you got all these unit profiles. Now you get maps, right? You get desktop maps, you get mobile maps, and you get all the e-scouting tools that I help put together with them. Most importantly, this thing called the terrain analysis tool. So with your insider membership, you get everything for application season, for research season, and for hunting season. So if you go out there, sign up for Insider, use promo code Randy, and they're going to give you $50 of mad money in their gear shop. And when you go out to that gear shop, it's real good gear. It's not the cheapest stuff. It's not the junk that, okay, it's got a lot of inventory turns, so we got to carry it. No, it's good gear proven by the people who use it. And you're going to see this thing called points. If you're an Insider member, you get points on every purchase. So you go buy this item and it says, oh, you get 60 points for that. That's $60 you get to use for your next purchase. So they treat their members well. They help us do all these videos. So if you're interested, go out to gohunt.com, sign up for the Insider, and use promo code Randy. But mostly, get your budget of money and time sorted out for this season, right? For this application season. Get your priorities in place for each state or each species. And mostly, make sure you're paying attention to what each state is doing and what these changes could be. And mostly, good luck. I hope that when the draws are all over, you have a whole mailbox full of tags. Thanks for watching.